how to say no, because that's a question that came up from someone, and it comes up all the time. It's like, okay, I'm on board that I gotta let some things go here and I gotta prioritize my time better. But how do I say no? Especially if you feel like you're in an environment where it just might feel like it might not be received. Now, there are ways that you can communicate a no in a way that can actually help earn respect from others and help it be better received in what you're doing. And so the first idea I would plant with you guys is like the first step is knowing what you want to say yes to and what you want to say no to. It gets easier to say no when you can be more aware, like this is a better use of my time. And so I'm going to say no to this thing. So what we've already talked about in the workshops, like getting a better sense on what your priorities are, what your values are, what, your boundaries are. Having a better sense on that is going to make it easier on what you say yes to and what you say no to. And then also just the idea that like people experience more stress when they have a hard time saying no, and that you're actually more effective as you learn to do this. And I say this, I'm really good at saying no now. I was not at the start. Like I said yes to everything. And then I'd be like, I'll just figure it out later, how to do this. And so everybody can learn how to do this. So just some tips to help with that. One is separating the decision from the person. Just because you're saying no to someone or I can't do this right now, it does not mean you don't care about that person or respect that person. Sometimes we can get so caught up and worried about letting someone down, or they won't think I'm a team player, that keeps you from making like the smarter, more strategic decision. And so actually when you can separate the decision from the person, it gets easier then to go, okay, I'm going to have the courage and I'm going to speak up about this. And another key thing with it too is also shift mindset, that you are saying no to something so you can say yes to something that matters more, or that you're making a wiser use of your time and your energy. So it can actually be an empowering experience as opposed to like feeling like, oh, I'm laying someone down or I'm not being a team player. Focusing is about saying no. That's a quote from Steve Jobs. And like learning how to say no is key when it comes to, yes, being more balanced, but also even performing at a higher level and being strategic. Like I talked about with Carla, focusing on the trade-off is a tip and a way that you can help say no. You don't have to say the word no. It can be like, oh yes, I'd love to do that for you. I just want to check in first, which is more important, this or this thing, because this is what I'm working on right now. And, I have this amount of time, or I want to make sure that I bring my best to whatever's most important. And when you start to focus on the trade-off with people, that's a really great one, especially with your manager, because you help others start to see the choice more. And they might still tell you an answer you don't like, but at least you have some more clarity on which one is more important. Sharing your reason why you're saying no. Now, this is a little one with a bit of a caveat, especially if you're, I always like to say I'm like a recovering people pleaser and a recovering perfectionist and all that. I have a tendency to over-explain things. So I have to be aware that I don't go into over-explaining my reason why. And I'm much better at it now, but at first I wasn't. But sharing your why, even if it's just a sentence, just a little bit of context to help somebody know why you're saying no to it. Because it's not because you don't care about them. It's not because you don't value them. You are making a different decision. So it can be as simple as like, thank you for this opportunity. I have a higher commitment that I have to focus on, higher priority item I have to focus on right now. So I'm going to do it at this point, or I won't be able to take this on right now. And then you can give an alternative, or you can, say, follow up with me next week if this is still important for you. But giving just a little bit of context can help, because otherwise people make up their own stories and you're not responsible for the story someone else makes. But I have personally found that just a little bit of context can help. Now, there's advice out there. I don't personally follow this, that no is just a one-word sentence and you can just say no. I've found in like influencing people and relationships, when I just say no to something, it doesn't tend to fly super well. So I like to just give a little bit of context, or like, thank you for the opportunity. I'm not going to be able to take it on for this reason, but just keep it short. and share your reason why, because it also like can help people get on board or understand where you're coming from. Another tip for saying no is to give an alternative. Is we often think as soon as something comes across our desk, we got to do it, we got to take it on. But actually going, hey, I'm not able to do this today. I can look at it next week. Would that work? Or, hey, here's, I'm not able to take it on right now. I think so-and-so might be able to help you with that, or someone from my team. But giving an alternative, you don't always have to give an alternative, but that can be a way that you can feel like you're still helping without actually taking it on yourself. Having a positive tone. There's this like idea that saying no is wrapped in negativity. It does not need to be this negative thing. Anytime somebody asks for something, like I'll often say, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for thinking of me. I have a higher priority thing I have going on right now. I'm not going to be able to take this on, or I'll respond to you tomorrow on that. But a smile, positive tone with it, that can go a long way with people in connection with other people as well. Because there's also a difference if we respond back with like, let's say you're frustrated, somebody asked you for something. If you respond back with your frustration, or it kind of makes you angry, that just creates more conflict in it. And sometimes that'll happen, that's okay. But actually, being like, hey, thank you for that, and share what you need to share. Another thing is like, avoid apologizing when you're saying no. And this is one I have to be aware of too, is that sometimes, lots of times, people will ask us for stuff and then I'm sorry, I can't do that. I'm sorry, I can't do that. Sometimes an apology is legit. Like if you really dropped the ball on something, or you said, hey, I'll be there to do this, and you weren't able to, sometimes an apology is a legit thing to do. But our knee-jerk reaction can be to just say, I'm sorry, I can't do that. I'm sorry, I can't do that. But what that does is that teaches you inside to feel bad each time that you're saying no. And you don't have to say no. Like even some of you, and like I said, I still catch myself sometimes with this. Some of you will reply back and say, I'm sorry, I'm not able to make it to Olive Workshop 2. And it's like, you don't have to apologize to me. You didn't make a commitment to me that you were going to show up each time. You're like empowered to make your own choices. If you were going to be there and you were going to present something and then you weren't going to show up, sure, maybe that makes more sense to apologize. But being really aware of when you can't do something, not to apologize. A little flip with that is just to say thank you. Instead of saying, sorry, I can't do this, thank you for the opportunity, or thank you for your patience, or thank you for your flexibility. That can just be something that can replace that sorry. And it's like from a psychology perspective, it helps you be more open to saying no. And then the final thing with it is actually to pause and create space to respond. So if you're someone who your knee jerk is to say yes, is to actually, and this was me, when I started to learn how to say no, like yes would come out of my mouth before I even like stopped to think about it. It was this knee jerk. And so what I focused on first was like, I will get back to you tomorrow. Thank you, sure. I'll get back to you in a little bit. And for me, that was just to create a little bit of space so I could practice thinking about, okay, do I actually want to say yes to this, or do I want to say no to it, and make that choice. So if your knee jerk is to say yes, sometimes you might have to make a decision on the fly, but also be okay to practice like just pausing or giving yourself a little bit of space so you can think about what you want to say yes to and what you want to say no to, and then how you want to articulate that. So like I said, when I started on this, it was just like, we'll get back to you later today. And then I went and like had the courage what to say yes to and what to say no to. But the thing is remembering that it's so important to practice this, because as hard as it can be to say no to someone, when demands mount faster than our ability to keep up, when we're feeling overwhelmed with things, again, we're not performing at our highest level, it doesn't feel very good. And that's where just things can get, too much on your plate and spread thin. So saying no is actually being strategic. It's being from an empowered place. And I would just encourage you, as you do it more, to practice how you say it and think about it and just keep learning. Pay attention as you go. How did this go? What would I tweak next time? And it is a muscle you build, and the more you do it, the easier it can get. And honestly, a big reason why now it's easier is because I know, like, I like the feeling of not having like super overcommitted. There's still sometimes I do where you say yes to something, it's like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said yes to that. But when people start to do this more, rarely do I feel like they don't like it, because people like feeling like they're not drowning in everything to do. People like having a little more space. So give yourself permission to do this more, and you know, see how it works for you. Amy says, well, I love this. Say no is strategic and comes from an empowering place. Yeah. And like I said, the more you're aware of what your priorities are, what your focus is, it gets easier what you're saying yes and what you're saying no to. And I had a client, I was just talking to her yesterday, and one of her big reasons for working together was she wanted to feel more confident what to say yes to and what to say no to. And it was super stressful. And she said, like, she's way less overwhelmed. It's way better. And the big thing for her was just being clear on what she wanted to say yes to and what she wanted to say no to, and learning to be okay with that. So, okay. So that is on saying no. Love to hear in the chat, what is one of those strategies that, you know, something from that resonates with you, or maybe even you have another suggestion or idea you want to share. I think another cue is like, just continue learning. I think this is an ongoing thing of like, sometimes you say yes to something and then you realize after, oh, I probably should have said no. And just being okay to pay attention and learn from that. Maybe you have to go back and say no, or maybe you just learn for next time to be, you know, more selective what you say yes or what you say no to.